I did think it was interesting that they put that in the trailer, but then took it out of the film. And I wonder if there was some backlash to that in pre-screenings or something, or they just decided, oh, we don't want to go that far.
I was in college and I know a couple people that I would consider a narcissist. And you're right. They have a way of getting to the front to where they have the loudest voice. And they have a way of convincing people to, do what I say. It should be done this way. And then when you go against that, and you're like, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking to do this. They have a knack for turning it around and then playing victim. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, Movies Are Spiritual, where we sit down and we find spiritual subjects or themes in movies past and present. Today, we're going to be talking about the movie Renfield, a movie directed and produced by Chris McKay. It was written by Ryan Ridley from a story treatment of Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman. And also, this movie serves as a direct sequel to the original 1931 film starring Bela Lugosi. And it's not anything like the original film. It's a lot different. So my name is Drew. Of course, with us as always is Nathan and Doug. So, gentlemen, what do you say we go ahead and dive right into this? First of all, what you guys think?
Not what I
expected. The immortal words of Drew, I would have to say, what?
Starring Nicolas Cage, and we have spoken about Nicolas Cage a lot on this podcast. It's one of Nathan's favorite actors of all time, probably his absolute number one favorite actor of all time.
Absolutely.
You
never know what he's going to do.
Exactly. You never know what you're getting. The only thing for certain with the Nicolas Cage movie is you are going to be entertained. You are going to be entertained, and yeah, he didn't fail.
Wicker Man was rough.
Wicker Man was.
Oh man, I would love to cover that movie sometime because he was making a different movie than everyone else.
I think so.
He got a different script,
but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, like you said, it was fun, and there were some under the radar themes going on, especially with being in a violent relationship. I know that is a pretty decent problem.
Yeah,
I thought that was a creative thing to bring into this film.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. I saw the trailer, and I mean, part of the preview was Renfield, in a support group talking about this abusive relationship he's in and how to get out of it. Yeah, and I mean, it's a very serious subject that a lot of people are in and don't know how to get help and get out of it. They definitely had a really good. There's an underlying plot there and a great message on how to get out of a situation like that. Probably not necessarily the way Renfield got out of it, but
I was like, what?
But yeah, for looking and trying to get all that help here. So speaking of Nicolas Cage and getting a Cage movie, he said that he wanted to bring something new to the portrayal of Dracula because there had already been several good depictions of Dracula before. So the question we have is, what do you think he chose to focus on? What was his different portrayal of Dracula? What was this one different than the other versions that we've seen? The two most popular, or I guess the three most popular versions of Dracula would be obviously Bela Lugosi. Christopher Lee played him in probably 150 movies, I'm guessing, but it seems like it. And Gary Oldman did a fantastic job in Bram Stoker's Dracula. So what do you think? What's your...
Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, well, Leslie Nielsen, Dead and Loving
Dracula,
It. Yeah.
Dead and Loving It?
Yeah. Oh, that's what it was. I just knew he played a vampire. I didn't even know it was Dracula. I've never seen that crap fest.
What do you think his focus is on in his
I
portrayal?
already know the answer, so this has got to be for Doug.
This will be for Doug because actually Nathan wrote all these questions.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, to begin with, obviously he's pulling a lot of Lugosi in because they deepfaked him and the other Nicholas onto the actual footage of the Bela Lugosi Dracula movie from the 30s?
1931, yeah.
So, and they did a great job with it too. I think he pulled a lot from Lugosi, although I think he feels more of a Christopher Lee Hammer type Dracula. He's a little bit taller, skinnier, kind of like Christopher Lee was. So he feels a little bit more like Christopher Lee, but I think he was going for more Lugosi personally. But
yeah, I kind of saw that too, and that was one thing we walked out of the theater that I had mentioned to Doug was they showed a picture of him during the credits, and I thought he looks a lot like Christopher Lee in some of these pictures, and I'm looking more at like the teeth that he had. I mean, the whole jagged, everything was jagged teeth, and it kind of reminded me more of a Christopher Lee, because Christopher Lee's Dracula had some jacked up teeth. So, but I don't know. I think I kind of agree with Doug. He's kind of pulling from both. I think he was trying to stay true to the classic Dracula character. I think he added a little bit more humor, and with some of the mannerisms that he had, the way he spoke. Because the original Bela Lugosi was very thick accent, very serious, and at this point,
that's the way people talked back then. You go back to the 1931, people aren't going, "What's up, dude?" They're
right.
"Good afternoon, sir." And so he's lived all the way through. So in the 50s and 60s, and peace, man, and getting into the 80s, and probably had many different styles of speaking and portraying himself, but all in a pretty proper manner.
Correct. Yeah.
The way he's always been.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when they play Dracula, they kind of always play it the same, as it's a stale kind of very, like you said, proper. And at this point, Cage is just like, no, I'm not proper anymore. This is how we're talking. And he's more modern than anything else. So, yeah. Nathan, what is your answer?
Dracula's movement. Cage wanted to focus on how Dracula moved. And you kind of see that when he enters the room, they really focus on how he walks, try to add some suspense that way. So that was Cage's answer.
This movement.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, he's definitely a lot more violent than any of the Draculas before him.
That.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie had, like I said, a lot more. I knew it was going to be funny. No doubt this was going to be a comedy, but I was not expecting the amount of action fight sequences that we got in this film. And it was way over the top.
I caught a couple Red Band trailers on YouTube, so
I did too.
I was like, oh, it's going to be one of those.
Oh, see, I didn't know that we were going to rip somebody's arms off and then use them as nunchucks.
Right.
It's like Monty Python on steroids.
Pretty much. A little bit. A little bit. So we have a couple fun facts about this film before we start going a little bit further in here. And this one comes to no surprise to me at all, that Cage stayed in character between takes.
No.
I know. Can you believe it? Can you imagine being on set with him as Dracula and the fangs and him still... It had to have been somewhat entertaining.
When they broke for lunch, did he just go drink some blood somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, how committed to this character was he really? Was he really doing it?
He slept in a coffin.
Another fun fact, and I don't buy this one. There's no way.
This comes from the director, yeah.
Oh, I don't buy this at all. The director says they actually shaved Nick's teeth down for the film.
Those were his actual teeth?
Well, he had dentures too.
So they shaved him down to put the dentures in?
Yeah, and they wanted him to be able to speak normally, so they shaved some other teeth.
What?
Is that crazy or what?
Well, when you got millions and millions of dollars, you can afford to do that and then have them replaced or, all that. You can probably do it in an afternoon.
Oh, my gosh. No thanks. And the other one is during the filming, more than 20 of the film's crews and vehicles were burglarized when they were filming in New Orleans. I did read that. They had like laptops and stuff stolen out of vans on set.
Yeah. People wanted to quit.
They wanted to walk out?
Yeah, some of the film crew, not the actors.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of their stuff got stolen.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It makes it hard to make a movie when that stuff's going on. All right. So let's go back into the movie here a little bit. We'll talk about some of the spiritual themes that we saw in the movie. Dracula depicted as pure evil, kind of like a Satan figure or an anti-Jesus figure. I mean, obviously, that's who we think Dracula kind of is when I think of him. He's the Prince of Darkness. He made a pact with the devil to live forever. Has any of you ever actually read the original novel, Bram Stoker's Dracula? Or have you seen the film at least?
I've seen the film.
Okay.
Read? No.
No? The film is actually very,
Read nothing.
it's pretty much right out of the book. So he did make that pact to become what he is. Basically, it's a love story. He loses his wife. She commits suicide. And he was just fighting a battle in God's name. And he felt like God had forsaken him. So he denounced God and made a pact that he would serve darkness for the rest of his life. And that's why he is the undead. So we don't see all that in this movie. This is actually, as we mentioned, a sequel to the 31 film, which really also, that one doesn't have his beginnings in that one either. It just kind of starts with Renfield is already crazy, or he shows up and gets crazy. The difference in between the book and the original 31 is it's actually Jonathan Harker who you meet coming. Renfield's already a loony by the time Harker shows up, but they just kind of cut that part out for the 31 film and just made it Renfield. And the 1992 version actually does show it.
So one of the reasons I thought this film showed Dracula as like a pure evil depiction compared to some of the other films is he has no redemption story in this movie. You don't see his origin either. He is just pure evil. Whereas in that 1992 Dracula film, he possibly gets his redemption at the end. There's some hints that, he started out as this Christian soldier, possibly during the Crusades.
I think it was. Yeah, that's kind of always what I thought it was.
Yeah, he starts out as this Christian soldier, like fighting for God, and then he turns against God because he's told by a priest that his wife committed suicide and that she's in hell. Well, the funny thing about that is we've talked about this on the podcast before, though, is the Bible actually doesn't say anywhere that people who commit suicide go to hell, but that is a traditional view that's taught. So that's in that 92 movie. And that's what causes Dracula to turn dark and become this anti-Jesus figure. So first he starts off, he's crusading for God, and then he's crusading against God. And at the end of that film, it's kind of left open-ended, like he's looking up towards heaven. And it's possible that he was redeemed at the end of that story. But here, like, this is a different Dracula. There is no good in this Dracula whatsoever. I mean, he is just like pure evil, pure chaos. So I look at him like more like a fully corrupted being, like a Satan figure. And I thought that
Yeah.
was interesting to look at the different Draculas over time, because even was it Bela Lugosi that was supposed to be kind of a romantic womanizer, or was that a later Dracula film?
No, I think it's been a while since I've seen the original one. In the 1931 Bela Lugosi film, Dracula wasn't depicted as, I guess he was pretty much evil, but he had charm to him. He was able to persuade people, and everyone thought he was this charming guy, and there's nothing wrong with him. And he
Yeah.
was, yeah, but he was evil. And then the Bram Stoker, like you said at the end, when he's dying and he's looking up at the ceiling, he goes from this hideous creature, this monster looking guy, to back to his original look, clean. And, he doesn't look evil at all. And that's how he dies. So yeah, there is kind of a redemption there, but they never had any type of redemption at all for the Bela Lugosi line. He was a vampire. He was scary. He was a monster. And that's all he was.
And this being a direct sequel of that one, just add 100 years of everything that's happened over the past 100 years, the wars, the hate, the riots, the 80s. I don't know why I said the 80s. Everyone makes fun of the 80s. I love the 80s. So, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially in this world, because this world, obviously, everything is ran by the mob. So,
Mm-hmm. Well, that actually also kind of goes into, like, with heroes. The next part here is one of the lines is the world needs heroes, and they're pretty scarce. And that's a line that Rebecca, I think was her name. She was a police officer. She said it to Renfield earlier in the film because he was supposed to be out collecting bodies for Dracula, and he watched this police officer stand up to a mob boss and didn't back down and showed no fear. And I think he, really respected that and admired that. So he basically helped her clear out an entire restaurant of bad guys with machine guns. And she said, "You just saved lives," which is something that he's never heard before because he's always just been taking lives. And she says, "You just saved a bunch of lives. You're a hero." And there's not many of those around. So I don't know. Nathan, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting how there's basically only two heroes in this whole movie, right? And they're portraying everyone as corrupt. Like you can't trust anybody. It's probably an exaggeration. Like I don't know of any institutions that are this corrupt, but they probably stress that to make a point. I think spiritually, part of that is supposed to be like, I'm always talking about the Garden of Eden narrative, where I think humans were supposed to go out and create good in the world, make it like Eden, so people see like a glimpse of what God is like. And that's what I thought of when I think of this. The world needs heroes. The world needs good people, good uncorrupted people, because they're supposed to show you something like what Renfield sees in Awkwafina's character. They're supposed to see like a glimpse of a better world. I like that storyline, but I did think it was funny that like there's not a single other cop that they can trust. There's no other cop in the department that she can go to. Like every single authority figure in the whole film is evil.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 The entire police department is under the control of this crime boss. And you're right. Her sister, I guess, is kind of, I mean, she works for the FBI. She seems like somebody, but for a while there, even Doug thought,
I said from the beginning, I said that she was going to be evil. She was going to flip on her sister.
Well, I thought she did actually.
Yeah.
Then I couldn't figure it
I
out.
was expecting her to, at any second, just pop up and say, "Oh, I was faking. I really killed Dad, and I was the person who did it," and all this stuff. But no, I thought. Then I was like, "Oh, well, okay, she's dead." And then she was there at the end, and I was like, "Oh, nope, she's good and alive."
yeah, drank some Dracula blood and she was ready to go.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, she
Yeah.
drank some of that blood. I forgot. Yeah, he brought everyone. Spoiler.
Yeah, I thought she sold them out when they were at his apartment later, but maybe not. So then at that point, I was like, oh, she's corrupt too.
I think she did actually, because when she said stay there, and her sister's like, "No, we've got to go," and she's like, "No, just stay there." And the very next shot is police officers flying down the road. So I'm thinking that she like found out where, but I don't know if she was turning them over. I think she was still trying to get Renfield, because she was on to all these murders that have been taking place all over the world, and they're all kind of the same MO. And clarity in for that story is, they mentioned that Dracula, Renfield's telling at the beginning, we live here. I go out, I do my thing. Word gets out. The good guys come to face Dracula. He gets beat up. Now he has to recover. So we have to move to somewhere else so we can get victims. And it's just a big cycle. They have to constantly keep moving. And the FBI sister's kind of piecing that together, that all these killings all over the world are all kind of tied into this guy that you're hanging out with. So maybe she wasn't necessarily betraying her sister as in trying to get this bad guy, but the rest of the police force 100% is completely corrupt.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I took it. It says like the police in the original script, the church, all of them is corrupted.
Yeah, it was in that Red Band trailer. There was a
Yeah, I was gonna.
remnant of that original storyline. So in the final film that you saw in theaters, you probably only saw the corrupt police. However, did you see the Red Band trailer? The one where he blows up the priest?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I do remember that
It's
now.
the
Yeah.
intro of the film where they've got Dracula trapped in that magic circle, the
Oh yeah,
protection circle, and then he ends up escaping because Renfield breaks the barrier. So Dracula then goes and blows up the priest, right?
right.
But the
Yeah,
line the priest says in the Red Band trailer, he says something like, "But the Catholic Church is one of the most trusted institutions of all time," or something like that. And then Dracula blows him up. So they were making a joke that you can't trust the Catholic Church. I assume because of the scandals. Lump that with the police thing. They were linking the two, and they ended up cutting that line from the final film, and they replaced it with something like, but we're the last of our kind. And I was
Yeah.
taking that to be like, okay, so there's some small sect of Christianity or Catholicism, rather than, destroying the Catholic Church or something. So they took a line out, and because of that, it's less clear figuring out what's going on in the intro or who those people are. The film overall, I think, was originally supposed to portray you cannot trust big institutions or organized police force, organized religion. I don't know if it was just kind of satirizing that or if it was like trying to tell us something. I don't think any human institution is immune from becoming corrupt. So in my mind, I don't pick on like, oh, all churches are bad or all, I work for a church, but all police force,
Right.
human beings have some kind of fatal flaw where they are capable of corruption, and that happens. But I did think it was interesting that they put that in the trailer but then took it out of the film, and I wonder if there was some backlash to that in pre-screenings or something, or they just decided, oh, we don't want to go that far because that's a fairly offensive thing to say about the Catholic Church right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Could they do plenty of test audiences and stuff like that? So they may have played a couple different versions, and maybe they were thinking, well, we can use the a line they used in the theater would be like Awkwafina's character was from a bloodline. Maybe there's a bunch of scenes that they just cut out where she's able to be so accurate and quick with the weapon because she is a descendant of the Van Helsing family somehow. So maybe they're with that line thinking that they would do that, and then when they started cutting, they're like, "Yeah, let's just get rid of that story."
Yeah.
Takes away from the humor.
I guess that support group was a church group too, so then they had a positive portrayal of them. I
Mhm.
was absolutely shocked when they all died, and I didn't think they were going to come back later. I'm glad they did, but that was a positive. I guess that was a positive portrayal of a church like trying to help people. So maybe
Yeah.
it just didn't fit with what they were trying to do overall.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be right. I took the line as the last of our kind as when he said it, it didn't really make much sense to me. As I was thinking like last of vampire hunters. Is that what
That's
you're
what I was thinking.
is that
Yeah,
what
the
you're the last
whole.
of?
I don't know if you would call it the Van Helsing bloodline, but maybe the. It wasn't the greatest of films, but what was that? It was kind of a vampire movie, mid to late '90s. Had James Woods in it, but basically it was about a group of vampire hunters, and they all worked through the Catholic Church.
Oh wow.
So, I kind of saw it as that, as, we're the last of the vampire hunters. Once we're gone, there's no one else. And maybe they were going to tell that story about how,
Oh, vampires.
oh, great name for a movie.
Yeah.
Vampires. It was interesting. I think they could have done some stuff better. They could have told the story, but I did like the fact that, the Catholic Church had this underground sect of vampire and monster hunters, and they could have done something cool with that if they had writers back in the 90s.
They kind of did that with the movie Van Helsing with Hugh
Oh god, that thing.
Hugh Jackson.
I tried with that movie, but that was
Right.
rough to watch.
But he was basically a worker for the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
They would send him out to take care of the monsters.
They do have like exorcists still.
Oh
The
Yeah.
yeah.
Catholic Church still
Oh
has
yeah.
them.
They don't have somebody who goes out and kills vampires and werewolves and
Right, right.
stuff
That
like
we
that.
know of.
That we know of, I
They
guess.
they didn't think they did in vampires either.
Yeah. So you mentioned the support group in the church. It's being a positive thing. Renfield's going here because he's in a abusive relationship, and he's not just coming out saying exactly what it is, but he's explaining to to his group that he makes me do things. He's abusive. He's verbally. I have to wait on this person. I have to do all these things, and if I don't do it, then this happens. And it's like the first time he's actually able to open up to people and feel some positive energy coming back to him, which is what gets him to go out and eventually get an apartment and start dressing in colorful sweaters and stuff like that. So
It was
and
an
stop
interesting
eating
style
bugs.
he went towards.
Yeah,
And
he
Mr.
did.
Rogers.
Yeah, he had a kind of a Mr.
Pretty
Rogers
close.
vibe. So So what did you guys think of the film's commentary on the abusive or codependent relationships? Why do you think that they did that for this film?
I think it was just a great way to bring Renfield to the front of the story. The movie's called Renfield, and if you look at the call sheet, Nicholas Hoult is the number one name. Cage is under him.
Really?
It is a Nicholas Hoult movie. Technically, if Cage would probably, if they nominated him for any kind of award, it'd be for supporting role. So I think that was a great way to kind of bring him to the front of the story, to be able to bring him to be the main character. But it's also it's a commentary on modern times. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in bad relationships, and those of us in good relationships like you two, or those of us not in a relationship, it may be easy to just be like, well, then leave. But again, we've never been in that situation. So, it's a good way to kind of, maybe, I don't want this to sound bad, but it's a good way to dumb down a very serious problem. And maybe it's a good way to just bring that to the attention. Then it's like, oh, that's what they're talking about. Okay, I see. Okay. So maybe that's another reason they wrote that in, is because it's a way to at least bring awareness to it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's good. And I think they also were trying to pair that with the theme of the large institutions being corrupt, like police. Because think about it this way. A few years ago, I went to the Global Leadership Summit, and there was a behavioral psychologist there that he really stuck with me because he was asking us what kind of qualities we thought people usually said leaders should have. Like, you're voting for president. Well, what kind of qualities should a good president have? And people will say humility, but how do they vote? They actually vote the opposite. They vote for narcissistic leaders and leaders with narcissism traits. And it's not just stuff like that. Like if you're doing a group project in college, there were studies about these group projects where people would let a narcissist basically lead the group. And people are under the illusion that the narcissist, like if they vote them into government, will get stuff done. But it usually works the other way around. So I guess the point is we know what makes a good leader or a good relationship partner, but we for some reason can't help ourselves and choose the opposite for some reason. And I think they're playing with that here. So it's sort of a commentary on where we are at as a society, and they make it personal too by talking about personal relationships and working for a narcissistic boss. So you could make it personal, or you could make it more like global, that they're exploring this issue of codependency and breaking away from that. So I don't know, is it just me? Do you think that's part of the reason they put that in there, because it's the times we're living in?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some social commentary there. I don't know if you guys have ever actually worked or have, like, I don't know, like I was in college and I know a couple people that I would consider a narcissist. And you're right, they have a way of getting to the front to where they have the loudest voice, and they have a way of convincing people to, do what I say. It should be done this way. And then when you go against that, and you're like, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking to do this. They have a knack for turning it around and then playing victim. Oh, you never want to do what I want to do. I do this for you, and I'm always doing this, and you guys never want to help me, and you're not whine, whine, whine. And then you go, okay, fine, we'll do it. And then I know a couple of guys I went to school with. I wasn't good friends with them, but they were in groups that we hung out with, and it drove me insane to watch them always get their way by just trying to be the loudest and trying to play victim when things don't go their way. And it's so I think a lot of people deal with that. And maybe in like the workplace, a lot of people deal with the boss who has that. They want that control, and they want that to be about me. It's all about me, and I want the control, and I want people to do what I want, and I want everyone to like me. And if you don't, then I'm going to completely rip you apart. And I think everybody faces that, and it's not always the easiest way to get out of it, especially if you're in a relationship with somebody like that. Like, how do you get away from that? Because they make you feel so bad when you hurt them. And Dracula does this to Renfield several times, just completely like, I've done this for you and I've done this for you, and now you're betraying me. You know, you're not helping me, and I've done all this stuff for you. And Renfield knows that what I'm doing is wrong. I'm not supposed to be doing this. This is wrong. But he always caves in, and he always gives in to Dracula's demands. So, and I think a lot of people have to deal with that in workplaces and relationships. So, as Doug said, this is, or we said, this is kind of like a lighter way of bringing this up.
That's a better way of saying it. Let's
Yeah,
say lighter way.
A lighter way of bringing this up.
Better than what I said.
And he even says, like, you actually have the power. They tell Renfield that. I am thinking about, because of that psychologist, politics, but without saying any parties or candidates or anything. Them telling Renfield, like, you actually have the power, is sort of like telling us, like, we actually have the power to choose who we put into whatever office, whether it be local or federal or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have the power wherever you're putting people in power in your life. You put them there. Like, I could get a different job if I thought I was in a bad job working for a Dracula, or,
Yeah. Or you get out of a relationship, and if, this person that you're, in a personal relationship with is that controlling and that bad and making you feel that way, get out. And of course, that's, as Doug said, that's easier said than done to get out of a relationship like that. But eventually you just have to, it's one of those where you think you're being selfish. If I leave, I'm being selfish because I'm not putting anybody else's thought. There are certain times where you just have to be selfish and just say, look, I can't do this anymore. This is it. And I don't care who it hurts.
And another thing, what was really cool and I liked was that first time when he busted out and helped the cop. When and you mentioned it earlier, when they said you're a hero, and people were like, "Thank you." He's like, you can see he's feeling that love and appreciation that he's never had. And I think, a lot of people can get into relationships like that where, you think you got to be there for this person and you love them. And no matter what they do, no matter how much they hurt you physically or mentally, I have to be there for you, because you get so used to just that's what life is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you need that person or that group of people to step up and be like, no, you're cool too. You don't, give you that happy feeling or that good feeling where it's like, okay, I don't need to take this anymore.
Yeah.
Like D. Snyder.
You see a lot of, I mean, you see a lot of that with, like women who are in abusive relationships with, their boyfriend or their husbands. And you got to think like, why do you put up with this? Why don't you just get out? And, I mean, I can kind of speak from some personal references on this. My mom and dad should have divorced when I was 10 years old, and they didn't until I was 28. And I'm not trying to bash my father because I love him to death. He's a great man now, but he was an alcoholic when I was a kid, and he's coming home late. And if dinner wasn't made, he'd get mad. And if I didn't mow the yard one day, that's why he was drinking the next day. It was stuff like that. And I mean, thank God he got sober, and he's not like that anymore. And I'm very lucky because a lot of guys who get in that situation stay in that situation. But when I talked to my mother about it, why don't you get out? Why didn't you leave? Well, I had 2 small kids. Okay, so you put me and my sister in that position instead of just getting out. She felt like that's where she had to be. That was her husband, and that was her job as a mother and a wife. And she has kids to take care of. What was she going to do? But she realizes now, later, that I probably shouldn't have done that. I should have been selfish, and I should have just left. I should have just gone and, take the kids with you, get us out of that situation. And it could have been hard, but she had support, and there was places that she could have gone. It's not like she would have been homeless, but it just took time for her to finally realize that there's so much more to offer. There's places she wants to go and things that she wants to do. And she just decided, I'm doing it. I'm not waiting around anymore. I'm doing this. And I want to travel and I'm taking off. And she started doing that when my sister and I got old enough and got out of the house. She was just doing her own thing. And then that's when it clicked on to my father, like, oh crap, she's like not around anymore and she's going to leave. So it helped get his act together. And, that's what kind of helped get him, sobered up and becoming the man that we wanted him to be forever. So, it all worked out in the end, but again, it's just one of those situations where you feel like you're trapped. There's nothing I can do.
And you're lucky with that because a lot of times it doesn't.
Yeah. A lot of times it doesn't work out that way. So sorry, Dad. I love you to death if my dad ever hears this.
Hey,
love you to death. You're great.
Come on.
He's a great man. He really is. He's a good man.
He is a cool dude. Yep.
It's a Renfield story.
Yeah. So, all right. So I just spilt my.
Love my dad, but he would not learn the electric slide for my wedding.
Oh, I refused. I told Doug was the DJ at my wedding, and I told him not to play the electric slide.
There's no way I would.
Ooh, I know. I would have left. All right. So moving on here, Renfield basically he ends up getting pardoned for all the crimes at the end of the movie because like he took down the bad guys, he took down Dracula, and they kind of just let him off the hook for everything that he ever did. And what do you think? Do you think he should have just been forgiven for everything? Or should he have faced some kind of consequence for the thousands of people that he brought to Dracula? What do you think?
Yeah.
One of the things I was wondering, we only see him kill guilty people in the movie, but they do tell us that he has killed innocent people in the past, right? I mean,
Yeah,
he would have had to have, right?
correct. You would think. I mean,
I don't remember if they said that or not.
So we really see Renfield when he's better, when he's getting better. We don't see his early ugly beginnings when he's first more corrupted. That's hard. It's like, do you judge him based on who he is now or who he was? Because I do know, like, police will make deals with people if they'll help them bust a whole crime ring. Maybe they get a lesser sentence. I'm surprised that he is completely off the hook.
What are the statutes of limitations on stuff like that?
Yeah, maybe it
some of them
is.
probably expired. But, well, wait, he was
Maybe.
only pardoned for the crimes committed in the United States, though. We got to think about this. They've been in Europe. They've been everywhere else. Like, if he was to go back to Transylvania, what would happen?
Yeah. Well, and I liked that he said that he was responsible. He didn't say that this was all Dracula's fault. He's like, I did bad things when he's talking with Awkwafina in the middle of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like he acknowledges that he can't blame all of that on Dracula. And I like that because you might not see that in every movie, but that is reality, right? He shares part of the blame
Mm-hmm.
for what he's done. He can't just blame it on the abuser. So I thought that was a pretty deep moment for him to say that. But yeah, I feel like he should probably face some consequences. But if you look at it as like a salvation metaphor, that is actually a really good metaphor for that, you know?
Well, yeah, because of, like you said, it's not who he was, it's who he is now.
Yeah, yeah.
And part of that has to be he finally broke out from under, Dracula's control and Dracula's spell. I mean, he was being that victim of abuse the way he was. He was doing what he felt, I guess, he had to do to keep surviving. If I don't feed Dracula, what happens? He gets mad. I get punished. So I have to do this. Even though I know it's wrong, I have to do this. Now, I'm not saying that's okay. But yeah, once he finally got out and realized I can break free of this, I think in a way, I guess you could say he's been redeemed a little bit. But yeah, I still think some jail time is in order.
Well, you got to remember too that this is in movie world.
Okay, yeah.
And in movie world, they're a little bit more lenient, because remember, in movie world, an old guy can take a high school kid and steal 2 fighter jets and fly them across the world, crashing one of them, and they'll be rewarded for it.
Yes. It's Iron Eagle. Yeah.
Well, if they had punished Renfield, it wouldn't be a perfect salvation metaphor anymore. So I don't know if they were going for that, But I wondered, since Dracula is kind of the anti-Jesus figure, an antichrist figure, I wonder if they were trying to go for a salvation metaphor there. If that's the case, you can't throw him in jail or it messes up the metaphor.
That's true.
Correct. Yeah, I think they're definitely going for he's been redeemed and he's going to live a happy life now, and all that's behind him. So he can wear all the sweaters he wants to wear and doesn't have to eat bugs anymore.
He's the white Dr. Huxtable.
I thought they were going to be special bugs.
So actually, he's just basically Zach Morris.
Zach Morris. A British Zach Morris is what he was.
He did talk to the audience a lot in the movie. I mean, not face to face, but he was the narrator.
So what would you guys have done to have made this movie better than what it is? What would you have done? Would you have fixed the story, fixed the plot? What would you have done?
It's a little gripe, but I'm still going to point it out. It was really, really funny. It was that dark, dry humor that I do enjoy from time to time, but it was almost constant through the movie. And it was like, all right, let's take a breath from these jokes, because, you know, I'm still laughing from this one, but you've already said a second and you're starting the third, and it's like, oh, slow it down. So I don't need a joke every beat. You know, give me a joke, give me a little story, give me a joke, give me a little story, joke maybe. But so yeah, that would have been my only thing. It was like, okay, we get it. You're funny. Let's get back to the story.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it was interesting. It was different. It was violent, but it wasn't hyper violent. I mean, it was hyper violent, but the blood was so cartoony that it wasn't John Rambo violent.
Yeah, it wouldn't gross out violence.
It was like, you know, like he said, he ripped the guy's arms off and was using them as nunchucks. He literally knocked out like 10 to 15 people with these arms, and they're still spurting out blood like a hose. It's like,
yeah,
there's no way that much blood was in 2 arms.
And then he impaled 2 guys with them.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
I don't know how he did that. I mean,
I guess he's got the strength of Dracula, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just stupid, violent, which can be and was fun for me. Yeah, it was funny, had an interesting story that we kind of went over. So, you know, I liked it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not going to be a movie I buy or watch over and over and over again. You know, I probably won't watch it for another 5-6 years until hey, I forgot about that one, you know?
Yeah.
At the same point, I had fun with it.
Okay. Nathan, what do you think?
So I thought it was pretty solid, but I did think that they kind of missed some opportunities on the plot a little bit. Because if you think about it, at the beginning, Dracula's talking about world domination. That's cool and all funny, right? But they actually never show us any of that. And you never really see him get anywhere close to world domination. So, you know, he befriends the mobsters, but like we see that for 2 seconds and then there's the final showdown. We don't actually get to see him conquer anything. That's where I think the missed opportunity was, because if they had at least shown some funny news interviews or what it would look like if Dracula took over, like what would he do, you know? Would he just bust cheerleaders to his palace or whatever? Would he like blow up buildings? Would he, you know, what would he do? I have to imagine it would have been pretty funny, but they don't really show any of that. So I feel like if they'd shown how terrible it would have been for him to take over, then that would have given us a little bit more tension going into that final showdown. I thought, you know, every authority figure being corrupt was a little bit of a stretch. I think they could have brought some tension in there too by making there be like one good cop or something, you know, like one good cop in the police station trying not to get caught. It's not a big deal because I think they did that to make a point. But if they really wanted to make this movie better, I think you insert 5 minutes where Dracula is starting to actually go public and take over, or he's walking around the city at night like just draining everybody. You know, we don't get to see anything like that, and I think that would have made a difference. It could have upped the stakes.
So you think they should have made Dracula a little bit more threatening?
Yeah, like we know he's threatening because we see his power, but we never see him do anything with it except fight the mobsters. But if he's gonna take over the world, go to Walmart and take out some people. Like, how funny could that have been? Or, show them
Yeah.
on the news, like, show people panicking. Everything that happens is underground, and no
Yeah.
one knows Dracula is taking over. And I wanted to see what would have happened. What would the public do if they knew this threat was out there? And then what kind of craziness would he pull?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess they could have, a way to do something like that is just to cut out the entire mob boss storyline altogether. It's, don't worry about him working with the mob. It's him with that, overall plan of world domination. And the entire movie is him building to that while Renfield is struggling on trying to get out of the spell and stop him from doing that.
Yeah.
I can see, I can see that. That may have made it a little bit more interesting to see, instead of working with the mob, just him recruiting an army.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, he talks about it. So it was world domination by Dracula, Post-it note, and Renfield.
His plan ended before it began, and I at
Yeah.
least wanted to see it begin, because otherwise it's like, oh, well, he got neutralized before he even walked out the door,
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I think they could have done something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think they were trying to just work on more of the story of the characters than the actual towards Renfield than Dracula. If they could have maybe teased a little bit of it and then had some kind of post-credit trailer that might tease a part 2 that could allude to that, because you saw Jean Raphael, I don't know the actor's name, but you saw him get kicked and spit out a lot of blood and then fall down, but did he die? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because he's a familiar, so maybe he heals quicker or something like that. So
Yeah. Well,
you can show that he's alive and he's pulling out chunks of concrete from the sewers.
Yeah. I mean, Doug does make that point there on why we probably didn't see so much more of Dracula's plan, is because this is taken from the point of view of Renfield. And this is about his struggle. And Dracula is, I don't want to say a minor character, but he's not the main character. Now, if this was a new Dracula film and it was about Dracula, then absolutely you need to see that stuff. But I think Doug kind of hit it right there when he said it's more about Renfield's salvation and recovery. But it still would have been neat to see Dracula starting to recruit a little bit more of an army and becoming a little bit more of a threat than what he was.
You could do one of those cut cartoon scenes that some movies do. This is my plan, and then it cuts to kind of crude drawings of him,
what he's doing,
making more familiars and making these army of familiars or vampires or whatever, and just show that kind of in some weird drawings or
like
cool
flash forwards
animation or something like that.
Yeah.
Could have done something maybe like that, but I don't think they wanted to spend a ton of money on getting a lot of extras and taking up streets to show him doing this stuff when the movie was mainly about the other character.
Yeah. And well, going by these notes also, I'm assuming Nathan feels pretty strongly about this one. Does every single authority figure have to be corrupt? Could they have given us a few more? Yeah. I mean, that's something that he on the notes is like, could they have had some more good guys other than the support group and, one police officer? But I don't know.
And her sister.
And her sister, I guess.
I think that was more of a comedy thing more than anything, because I mean that police chief was just ridiculous. He was hilarious, but it was just like, don't worry about it, this and that, and everything he was saying. It was like, oh, it's so funny. I mean, it's
I thought the comedy was pretty good. So, is there any other maybe spiritual themes that you saw in this film?
I mean, you always have the good versus evil. We've got the redemption story, but, not as much spiritual. I think the main purpose, other than making a stupidly violent, funny movie, was to kind of tell a story about abusive relationships and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Drew and I saw the movie yesterday, and we walk out of the theater, and that's the first thing we said was, this is a movie about abusive relationships. They don't try to hide that, and I think they tell the story well. I think that's the main story they're going towards. That's a
Yeah.
positive story to tell.
Yeah.
I kind of think so. If you're like me and you believe that there's a spiritual world and this world, you believe there's God and there's evil spirits like Satan. So ultimately, we're trying to figure out in this life like which one of those we want to side with, right? Like, do we want to be with God? Do we want to be somewhere else? And when you watch a movie like this, where there is a pure evil figure, it's kind of an exercise in showing you what it would be like to live in a world where Satan is actually there, like ruling or something. So I kind of think of it that way because whether or not Dracula is supposed to be a Satan figure, he's obviously influenced by Satan because we talked about that's part of his history as a character. So
Oh, plus he
he's
hates the church.
yeah, he's Satan's minion. So you look at what he's doing and the chaos he's causing. That's kind of like trying to decide, okay, do I want to live in a world where this guy is ruling or not? There's an interesting metaphor too that the church group is resurrected by Dracula's blood. Because I said he's
Yeah.
the Antichrist. People say we're resurrected by Jesus's blood, right? That's one of the phrases they use. Well, here they did the opposite. They kill Dracula, they take his blood, and then they use it to bring these people back from the dead, from the support group. And I think that's kind of a funny way to change up the Easter story.
A little bit.
Another good point.
I one other thing that I thought that kind of goes along with the spirituality is I think there's a lot of temptation in this movie and how to deal with that temptation. Going with the first story in the Bible with Adam and Eve and getting tempted by the serpent and eating the forbidden fruit, and we all know what happens after that. There's a lot of temptation in this because at one point I thought that our good police officer friend was actually going to give in to the temptation of bringing her sister back to life because Dracula's telling her, I'll bring her back. All I want you to do is follow me and do what I say. And I honestly thought that she was giving into that temptation, that she saw something that she really wanted. And if this is what I've got to do to get it, I'll do it. Fortunately, she did not give into that temptation. She actually gave away from it. That's something that kind of stuck out to me. And there's a few other instances where, again, Renfield is not wanting to do what he's supposed to do. And what is it? Dracula says, go get me some happy couple, some visiting tourists, some nuns, or a busload of cheerleaders. He's sitting in the bar and he looks up and there's a happy couple. He looks over here and there's a table of nuns. And then a bus of cheerleaders goes by and he's like, are you kidding me? And he knows he doesn't want to do this, but he has to give into that temptation of, I have to do something. And he was actually going to go get the cheerleaders. He got out of his chair and was walking to the back. So I think I kind of also dealt with that temptation of trying to resist what you know is not right. And for the most part, I think they did a pretty decent job of that.
Yeah, that's good. That reminded me of something that I saw when I was watching the movie. After they beat Dracula and they turn and they look at all the torture tools on the wall, I
Yeah.
thought at first, oh no, they're giving in to their hate, like cutting him up and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but then I realized, oh wait, they have to because otherwise he can just come back to life. So then I realized they're not giving in to their anger and hate here. They're trying to save the world because he can come back together and
Yeah.
resurrect himself if he's not in a million ice cubes in the sewer.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty hard for him to come back from that one. Let's get into our final verdicts here. Do you or do you not recommend the movie Renfield? I'll start with Doug. What do you
Me?
think? Yes.
As an adult, yes, but it is, again, being on a spiritual podcast here, it is pretty wide open with the language.
Yes, it is.
It's one of those things where if a lot of swearing doesn't bother you, it's a fun movie, just goofy, stupid violence, funny characters. So yeah, you can have fun with the movie. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I probably won't see it again for many years to come. But if stuff like that bothers you, younger children definitely not. just prepare again what you're going into. But all in all, I enjoyed it.
Nathan, what do you think?
Oh boy.
It's a Nicolas Cage film.
Yeah. So Nicolas Cage,
I
my
thought that was an automatic yes.
That's what I
I
thought.
think Nicolas Cage did a fantastic job as Dracula. I
Yeah.
definitely thought that. I mean, he looked great in those repurposed shots of the old film, and even when he was modern Dracula, it was pretty funny. And the way he messes with Renfield's head and gaslights him and treats him, it will make you hate him. That's by design, though. So
Mhm.
he did a great job of playing a pure evil character. Now, whenever I watch a Nicolas Cage movie, I never know what I'm going to get because he takes you into all kinds of weird places, sometimes ones you don't want to go. And after I watched some of his movies, I'm like, what did I just see? Like, I can't unsee that. So, this movie is not for everyone. If you are squeamish or you don't like, I mean, there's extreme, it's cartoony, but it's extreme gore in this movie. Like, beware, you probably won't want to watch it. If you can handle that and you can understand that this is like Monty Python on steroids, then you'll be
Good
okay.
way to describe it. Yep.
Yeah. I would say I can't figure out how I feel about it. It was an interesting film. I wish they'd done a little bit more, like I said, with Dracula. And I loved those classic shots they did. And I wish they could have taken a little more of that feel and put it throughout the film. I don't know how, but I don't know. I'm gonna say mild recommend if you can handle a lot of gore and language
Yeah.
because it's interesting. But like I said, when I left the theater, I just can't figure out how I feel about it. I'm like, that was so strange.
All right. I enjoyed it. I had a good time in the theater watching it. It's going into it. I kind of knew what I was getting into. I knew this was going to be funny. I knew it was going to be probably a little over the top. I didn't expect, like I said, all the amount of action sequences and yeah, I mean it's a vampire movie. I knew there was going to be blood, but yeah, this was an excessive amount of blood. And for the listeners, when we're saying it's gory and blood, you have to understand that the blood that you see, a majority of it is computer generated. I mean, it looks cartoonish when it comes out.
When he
It's
says
not like
majority, I mean 99.9.
not yeah. It's a couple times you see what looks like real blood. For the most part, you can see it, and it's just it's you can tell it's fake blood. So it's not as uncomfortably gory as it could have been. I enjoyed it, but I think my recommendation would be just wait for it to come out on streaming services and just do it that way. I don't know if I'd spend the money again to go see it. I think
Oh, I
I
definitely wouldn't spend
no, I could
see
have
it twice. No.
no, I would have. I mean, it's just one of those movies that's like, I probably could have just waited for this to come out on Amazon or Netflix or something like that and watched it, and
But
I
you're
would have been happy with
changing
that.
the world when you do that. We've
I
got to
get
get back
that.
to the theaters.
I know that, but
Dude,
there's other
I'm the
movies.
same way. This is the first movie I've seen in a theater since, I don't know, our last movie we talked about that was in a theater.
Knock at the Cabin.
That one.
Yeah.
And then before that, I think it was Top Gun.
Yeah. It's, and no, going to the theater is always a lot of fun, but there was also a lot of other movies that came out a long time ago that I looked at and went, yeah, I'm interested in seeing it, but I think I might wait. I'll just wait. And I think this is one of those movies where you can wait. I don't, I don't think you get anything more out of seeing this one in the theater as you would sitting in your house. Top Gun, you wanted to see in your theater. Jurassic Park, you need to see in the theater. Star Wars, you need to see it in the theater. Renfield, you can just watch in your living room and it'd have the same effect. So that's my recommendation. I thought it was enjoyable. It's over the top. It's corny, but don't spend your money on it. Wait for it to come out.
I did think the opening scene was incredible. Like it was riveting. When I was at the
Yeah.
beginning of the movie, I thought it was going to be incredible. It just doesn't keep that up consistently throughout. And
Yeah.
I was, I don't know, I think I was a little let down. I thought I just expected a little bit more. And I can't tell you of what because I don't know. But I mean, Cage does such a great job. He's maybe underutilized. Maybe that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and most people I know, I think, are going to be horrified by this movie. So just know what you're getting and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best thing to do, we mentioned it earlier, go to YouTube and type in Renfield Red Band Trailer. You'll see the fake blood. You'll hear how much swearing is in a 2-minute trailer. If that bothers you, then multiply that times 50. That's what the movie's going to be like, basically. So, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Good idea.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that I think concludes our podcast for Renfield. I think we've got some more ideas coming up here for some future films that we're going to dig into. And obviously, we put out shorts on YouTube that you can watch to put the podcast out. I think it also might be a good idea if we take some requests from some of our listeners when we come up with movies. Maybe if you want to drop it in a comment box of a film that you'd like us to take a look at and talk about, we would be more than happy to do that, because sometimes we struggle on coming up with what the next movie is going to be. So we have to sit here and kind of think. So if you have something that you would like us to talk about, go ahead and put that out there and we'll get to it. Right?
Yeah.
Sound good?
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. And if you liked what you heard, go ahead and subscribe to it. And like I said, we have a YouTube channel. We're on TikTok. We're doing all the stuff.
Give thumbs upses.
Thumbs upses. And we will talk to you later. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Or night.
Or night.